My husband Jack had a heart attack while trying to save his sweetheart from drowning. He was in critical condition. The doctor said unless he got a heart transplant, there was slim hope of survival and advised me to be prepared for the worst. I cried and said, "We can't waste national resources on him. He's such a jerk that even his breathing is a waste of oxygen." I decisively signed the paperwork to discontinue treatment. An hour later, Jack glared at me with resentment in his eyes and then stopped breathing. I quickly got his death certificate, had him cremated, stored the ashes at the funeral home, and then went home to sleep. The next morning, Jack's sweetheart Vivien showed up. She wore a silk slip dress, and with a tiny waist, held Jack's favorite breakfast in her hand. Her haughty gaze went past me as she called inside. "Jack, I brought you breakfast." As if she thought I was her personal doorman. When Jack was alive, he ate up Vivien's act. If I ever lost my temper, he'd side with her and turn against me, but now, since he was dead, it was time for payback. "Vivien, Jack is dead. You're not welcome here. Plus, I have dogs, and since you're pregnant, it's not safe for you to be here. Please leave." "Wendy, how can you be so cruel? Jack got sick trying to save me. How could you curse him to die?" "I don't care, I'm going in." I blocked her with one hand and shouted dramatically, "You can't come in." Meanwhile, I discreetly pressed a button that opened the dog crate in the guest bedroom. The dogs came charging out and started jumping excitedly at the food in Vivien's hand. Vivien barely stood there for a moment before the dogs surrounded her, fighting for the food. She screamed as she fell hard to the ground, wincing in pain. "Wendy, you're going to kill my baby." I'd already called an ambulance when the dogs first swarmed her. The ambulance arrived quickly. Vivien was in agony, yelling, "I'll sue you for attempted murder." I stood at the door with an innocent face. "I warned you, but you didn't listen." Vivien was taken to the ER for an abortion procedure. Not long after, Jack's parents, who claimed to be on vacation, arrived. Jack's mom slapped me across the face without saying a word. Of course, I wasn't going to let her actually hit me. Just before her hand met my face, I ducked behind her husband. Jack's mom missed and hurt her back. You dare dodge? Mom, why are you hitting me?" "Something happened to Jack, and I called you multiple times, but no one answered." I tearfully wiped the corners of my eyes, looking pitiful. Thanks to the tear gas on my tissues, the tears flowed easily. I wanted to laugh. My scumbag husband died young, leaving me a fortune. His pregnant mistress had a miscarriage, meaning one less person to fight for his inheritance. I could barely contain my happiness. "You wretch! How dare you curse my son? Nothing could have happened to him." Jack's mother angrily charged at me again just as two police officers arrived. I immediately hid behind one of the officers, thinking, "Your son is dead. What's going on here?" One officer demanded. Jack's mother, known to be a coward especially around authority figures, muttered, "She caused our neighbor's daughter to miscarry." I smirked inwardly. She didn't even have the courage to mention her grandson. I already knew their dirty intentions all too well. "Wendy, we need you to come with us. Vivien has accused you of causing her miscarriage," the officer said to me. Vivien, pale as a ghost, sat in a wheelchair, being pushed by a nurse following the police. "This is unjust. Vivien trespassed into my home. I warned her there were dogs and that it was unsafe, but she wouldn't listen." I quickly defended myself. "You're just jealous of Vivien because she's better than you in every way. You harmed her out of spite. Compensate her with your house and car, or you'll go to jail." Jack's mother yelled maliciously. Vivien cried pathetically, and Jack's mother comforted her as if she were Vivien's mother. "Do you have any evidence for these claims?" The officer ignored Jack's mother and asked me. "Evidence? She's lying," Jack's mother screamed. Actually, I did have evidence. There was a high-definition surveillance camera at my doorstep, which clearly recorded Vivien's forced entry despite my warnings. Jack's mother turned pale with rage. "Oh, poor thing. Since she just had a miscarriage, I won't hold her accountable for trespassing," I said magnanimously. Seeing the clear evidence and my leniency, the police gave Vivien a warning and had her sign some papers before leaving. Vivien was furious but was too weak to even stand. I looked at Vivien and smiled gently. "Vivien, does it hurt? This is just the beginning. Mom, Jack is dead." I walked up to Jack's mother, pretending to be grief-stricken. "I wanted you to see him one last time, but you wouldn't pick up my calls now. He's been cremated." Jack's mother turned livid. "I'll tear your mouth apart." She charged at me again, but I pulled out the death certificate. She froze in place. After reading the contents, she let out a tragic scream and fainted. Vivien tried to get up to help her, but I pushed her wheelchair towards Jack's father, almost toppling over in the process. I held Jack's mother slightly, pretending to help. "Careful, don't fall too lightly." Jack's mother fell hard on the floor. Jack's father caught Vivien and, after a brief pause, helped her sit up. "Wife." Jack's father rushed to pick her up. Jack's mother took a deep breath and started wailing, cursing at me, "It's all your fault. You killed my son. How could you not let us see him one last time before cremating him? Call the police. Arrest her for murdering her husband." Jack's mother screamed. I quietly watched as Jack's mother cried her heart out, completely losing her voice. In the past, I'd get extremely anxious if her face showed even a hint of displeasure, fearing she might affect my relationship with Jack. Now, seeing her cry like this, I felt an incredible sense of satisfaction. "Mrs. Jackson," I said, "you can't just accuse me of murdering my husband. Jack died trying to save Vivien. You're lying. You're just jealous because I'm carrying Jack's child." Vivien shouted back, her face pale. She must have already thought about the cause of Jack's death. "What? You're pregnant with Jack's child? Oh my God, you two did such a thing behind my back." I burst into tears, pointing angrily at Vivien. "No wonder Jack had a heart attack saving you. It all makes sense now." Jack's parents looked at Vivien, realizing something wasn't right. Vivien hurried to explain, "No, it was just a joke. How could Jack have a heart attack because of that?" The previous day, Vivien had threatened to commit suicide and called Jack, saying she was going to jump into the river. Jack rushed over, thinking she was in the water, and jumped in without a second thought, but Vivien wasn't even by the river. Jack was pulled out and taken to the hospital, and that's when I found out. "You vile woman. A joke? Your joke killed my husband. You knew we had a dog at home yet barged in. I think you did it on purpose so Jack couldn't leave a legacy." I shouted, making sure Jack's mother heard me clearly. Fortunately, Jack's mother didn't disappoint this time. She snapped back to reality, lunging at Vivien, her fists and palms raining down on her. "Bitch. We fed you, gave you a place to stay, and you killed my son. And my grandchild too. I'll beat you to death." No, it wasn't like that," Vivien screamed in agony. Jack's mother, known as a fierce woman in our area, easily overpowered the weak and post-miscarriage Vivien. I watched the scene unfold. Jack's fierce mother, Vivien's pitiful crying, and Jack's helpless father standing by. I couldn't help but smirk. This dog-eat-dog drama was indeed worth watching. The chaos only ended when the police arrived. Amid the disorder, I slipped back home and looked at the deed Jack had signed over to me. Couldn't help but hum a tune. My dogs, Kenny and Kiwi, sensing my good mood, circled around me. The next day, Jack's parents showed up at my door with a lawyer. "Wendy, this house was my son's. You didn't work after marrying him, and all the savings were his earnings. These belong to us. Don't think you'll get a cent," Jack's mother said, her eyes swollen and red, staring at me with hatred. "Mrs. Jackson, this house is my premarital asset, bought outright by my parents," I replied quietly, sitting on the sofa. After all, my revenge wasn't finished. I couldn't just throw a knockout punch yet. "I don't care. My son is dead, and these should provide for my old age. As my daughter-in-law, you have an obligation to support me," Jack's mother said loudly, confidently. The lawyer, shocked by her assertion, glanced at me sympathetically and then cleared his throat. "Wendy, do you have any objections?" "Mrs. Jackson, Jack indeed made a decent amount of money, 100 grand. You can check his bank transactions. I'll give all that to you as your support. The house, however, is my bottom line." "I can't give that to you," I said, choking up as if cornered. Jack's mother was stunned, clearly not expecting me to offer all the savings. She had consulted the lawyer before and knew they could at most claim a third. "Wendy, don't think you can fool me. I will check the bank transactions," she said, still wary. I nodded, thinking, go ahead, check. You should know how much Jack gave to Vivien. Besides, Jack's savings weren't the most valuable asset. The most valuable were the shares he had transferred to me for using my dad's connections in financing, something I had no intention of telling them. Vivien was now useless to the Jackson family. Given Jack's mother's nature, she would definitely force Vivien to return all the money she had taken. "Mrs. Jackson, if Wendy agrees, we can draft an agreement to secure your rights," the lawyer suggested. "All right, let's do it. State clearly that all of Jack's income and savings during the marriage will be ours." Jack's mother immediately agreed. The lawyer looked at me. I nodded. "Mrs. Jackson, to avoid future disputes, I'll transfer Jack's 100 grand earnings to you all at once. In return, don't worry. I'll never come to see your wretched face again. Who knows how many nightmares I'd have," she said disdainfully, treating me like a bacteria she couldn't wait to get rid of. "All right, I'll let the lawyer draft it," I whispered, timidly lowering my head when she glared at me. The lawyer spoke softly to her. "Since you're not planning to seek her out again, let's just get this over with. This way, you'll have your 100 grand soon." Jack's mother nodded, urging the lawyer to draft the agreement quickly. He promptly printed the agreement. In essence, 100 grand to be done with, no further claims. Jack's mother insisted on adding a clause stipulating that if Jack's marital earnings exceeded 100 grand, would have to pay the difference. She was as meticulous as ever. Under her watchful eye, I signed the document. "I have something to say, considering our relationship as in-laws over the years," I said hesitantly. "Spit it out." "I'm busy," she snapped impatiently. That day, Vivien said she had been in a relationship with Jack for a while. She didn't know how many expensive gifts Jack had bought her. I remembered a gemstone necklace. "I initially thought it was for you, but I never saw you wear it. I heard it cost 100,000 or so. You should check if Jack gave it to Vivien," I said. Jack's mother's eyes lit up, then turned to pure disgust. "That little bitch. Jack must have spent a lot on her. I'll get every bit of it back." I nodded. "You're right, Jack's mother. I have no position here. It's up to you to make things right. Everything you get back is rightfully yours. It was mine to begin with." Jack's mother glared at me and then walked away. Jack's dad looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything. He just followed Jack's mother. The lawyer, he nodded slightly to me. I gently tapped my phone, and he understood, smiling as he left. Half an hour later, I got a message back from the lawyer. My in-laws, along with the lawyer, had already obtained my husband's bank statements. I heard their faces looked pretty grim. After all, Jack had saved up quite a bit over the years, but it was all spent on someone else. Going forward, things between Jack's folks and Vivien were destined to be messy. My first battle had temporarily ended. Sitting in the spacious living room, I felt a surge of emotions. Jack and I were college classmates. Back then, he chased after me, bringing breakfast to my dorm every morning, and walking me to my dorm after evening study sessions. He'd give me flowers and gifts on every holiday and anniversary without needing reminders. They weren't expensive, but they were thoughtful. At that time, I thought that was love. I'm the only child in my family. My dad's business was successful, and my mom was a university professor. Having received a good education from a young age, I had no concept of money. Using Jack's words, girls like me were rare, ones that didn't seek material wealth and only pursued spiritual fulfillment. Then, I thought he genuinely meant that as a compliment. Now looking back, he was calling me naive, and I even felt proud of it. Really naive. After college graduation, we naturally moved towards discussing marriage. Jack's parents lived in the countryside. I heard his mother was domineering, well known as a shrew in the area, speaking loudly and with fierce eyes. Initially, I was a bit nervous. Before we got married, his mother treated me quite well, eagerly asking if I wanted noodle soup. After all, marrying me would bring a fully paid house and a car worth around $50,000, and my parents only asked for a token dowry of $8,800, but after marriage, they gradually showed their true colors. Jack was good at acting affectionate, making me feel he endured a lot for love, while I became more and more tolerant of his mother. Initially, Jack treated me well. Our company grew step by step, and he used the pretext of planning for a baby to convince me to stay home and rest, effectively weakening my influence in the company. Until he completely controlled the company, then he showed his true nature. That's when Vivien showed up, and Jack became more blatant, even bringing her openly to our home, making out in our bed. They thought I knew nothing, smiling while waiting for Jack to drain me of the last bit of value before dumping me. A woman's mind is always keen and sensitive, especially concerning her husband. I sensed something was off the first time Jack brushed me off. That day was our anniversary. He sent a large bouquet of blue roses, my favorite flowers. He had once said that when we had money, he'd give me a large bouquet on every anniversary. But this time, the person who ordered the flowers was his secretary. He said he had a tricky client to deal with. A very tricky client indeed. Vivien had her legs wrapped around his waist, eager even in a private room. How ironic, I was at the same restaurant that day, sitting in the next room. I overheard the whole thing. Thinking about my feelings back then, it's indescribable how pained I was. I almost wanted to grab the restaurant's knife and castrate Jack on the spot. But I couldn't just lose love and money. I needed to reclaim everything that was rightfully mine. So, I swallowed my grievances, collecting evidence of Jack's infidelity while placing my people back into the company and leveraging my dad's business connections. Jack probably thought until his last breath that I was hopelessly in love with him, so when I lured him with the financing bait, saying that I needed to be the absolute controlling shareholder, he didn't hesitate to transfer the shares to me legally. I planned to take the money and dump him. But he ended up dead because of a joke of Vivien's, which felt like a gift from above. Vivien's miscarriage wasn't exactly my doing either. I just intended for Jack and Kenny and Kiwi to eat the same food. Unexpectedly, it affected Vivien. I'd add some chicken legs to their meal tonight. The urgent doorbell pulled me back to reality. I got up to open the door. A man named Gary stood at the door. I opened it. Heard about the Jack incident. Are you okay? Gary looked me up and down, relieved to see no grief on my face. I'm fine. Why are you here? Come in. I invited Gary inside. Unexpectedly, he wasn't alone. Just as I suspected, you've been keeping another man behind Jack's back. Vivien, looking haggard, rushed over, with two men in tow. One of them was snapping photos of Gary and me like crazy. I laughed in exasperation. A mistress catching the legitimate wife in the act. Not to mention Jack was dead. Even if he was alive, Vivien had no right to point fingers at me. I was indulging Jack's parents because I wanted to watch a bigger drama unfold. But Vivien, served up on a platter, deserved no mercy from me. Vivien, do you even look in the mirror before stepping out? Look at your face. You wouldn't need makeup to play a ghost. Vivien was stunned, clearly not expecting I'd fixate on her face. You. What about me? I heard not taking good care of yourself after a miscarriage makes your bones ache every time it rains. You'll soon understand that. I interrupted her. Wendy, I said you were cheating, and you give me all these excuses. Vivien was shaking with anger. I heard Wendy's cheap husband died, and someone's after her. Gary Sadie knew he was backing me up, so I played along, holding my head high. I've been sleeping and eating well lately, so I look radiant compared to the haggard Vivien. Gary smoothly wrapped his arm around my waist. You're the mistress who got pregnant with Wendy's husband's child. What nerve do you have to show up here? I'll help Wendy take you to court and get back everything Jack bought you. Vivien shuddered. How could this be? She couldn't let go of the money now that Jack was gone. Wait, is the money for the help you hired also mine? I asked, sarcasm dripping from my voice. I should definitely get that back. You're lying. Jack never gave me any money. Don't you dare slander me, or I will sue you for defamation, Vivien said, motioning for her entourage to leave. She fled like a rat in the street. I crossed my arms and looked at her with disdain. Vivien, today is the last time you'll get away unscathed. Wait until Jack's mother comes after you, Wendy. Gary's voice pulled me back to reality. I looked at him. Wanna come in? Gary nodded, his eyes full of complicated emotions. Wendy, are you really okay? Gary asked again, sitting on the sofa. Kenny and Kiwi circled around me, and I patted their heads. Fine. My husband's dead, I have a hefty inheritance, the mistress miscarried, and my in-laws hate me so we'll never see each other again. What's not to like? I said calmly. Gary suddenly grabbed my hand. Wendy. I was shocked. What? I was serious about what I said just now, Gary said solemnly. Which part? I asked. Gary paused for a moment. I'm courting you. I almost spewed water in his face. Are you kidding me? You like flirting with widows now? Gary's face turned almost crimson. Wendy, be serious. I can't. Didn't you say that holding my hand was like touching your own? I said, recalling our past. At first, I had a huge crush on Gary. My mom liked him too. We were childhood friends, knew each other well, and our families lived close. He was the perfect son-in-law. Before the college entrance exam, I planned to confess my feelings to him. But I overheard him telling a friend that holding my hand was like touching his own. I ran away that day. My budding love was crushed before it could bloom. I secretly changed my school preferences, moved far away, and later met Jack. His open and fervent pursuit made me feel valued, so I ended up with him. We got married after graduation. After starting college, Gary and I kept in touch sporadically. He asked why I changed schools. I said I wanted to experience different cities while I was young. He didn't say much. After Jack and I got together, he only sent me greetings on my birthday and holidays. We had no other contact. He didn't attend our wedding but sent a gift. You missed the second part of my sentence. Holding hands like that is always warm, always needed, Gary said heavily. I snapped out of my memories, stunned once again. You thought I meant no feeling at all, Gary continued, his emotions roiling in his eyes. Do you know I've wanted to marry you since I was 18? But you changed your plans and left. You dated in college and married after graduating, while I suffered alone. What did I do wrong, Wendy? Gary said, holding my hand. I was speechless, my heart aching indescribably. I had missed half a sentence and rewritten both our lives. Now it's no use talking about this, I finally said softly. Yes, it is, Wendy. We have another chance now. I'm right here in front of you. We can clear things up, Gary said firmly. But I'm a widow, I mumbled. I don't mind the gossip, Gary said. Wendy, you still like me, don't you? Gary asked. I pulled my hand back. It's been so many years. I don't know. It's okay if you don't know. Just let me stay by your side. I'll wait. Give me a chance. You can't refuse, Gary insisted. Why can't I refuse? I muttered. Gary fixed his eyes on me, looking like he might do something drastic if I didn't agree. All right, fine, let's try. But if I began. I'll leave if it doesn't work, Gary cut me off. He didn't want to hear the rest. I nodded. From that day, Gary moved into my house. At first, I resisted. Who starts pursuing someone and moves in right away? But Gary said I was his only friend here. Having just moved, he hadn't found a place or a job yet. As a friend, I should take him in. He made a pretty good point. So he stayed in the guest room. Gary took care of all meals and walking the dogs. I enjoyed it, taking care of Jack's stocks, funds, and company shares as quickly as possible. Though I had put a lot of effort into the company, I just wanted to leave it all behind now. Of course, before leaving, I wanted to see some good drama. The next time I saw Vivien was a month later in the commercial district. Jack's ferocious mother, with some other middle-aged women, had cornered Vivien, shouting curses. "Vivien, you little tramp. Give back all the money you took, and the jewelry too." Jack's mom screamed, tearing at Vivien's clothes. "Auntie, no, please." Vivien covered her face and pleaded, but it was useless. Soon, she was stripped almost bare, desperately trying to cover herself. Jack's mom spat on her viciously. "Vivien, you whore, I'll give you 3 more days. If you don't return the money, I'll beat you to death." After saying that, Jack's mom left. Vivien was humiliated, lying on the ground, crying so hard she couldn't catch her breath. It was quite a sight. I walked up and threw the discounted bedsheet I had just bought on her. Vivien froze, looked up, and when she saw me, her face turned red with shame and anger, like she wanted to disappear. I was glamorous, and she was pathetic. This is how it should be between us. I turned around and headed to the parking lot. Soon after, Vivien followed, clutching the sheet tightly, and got in my car. "Can you give me a ride?" she asked hesitantly. It was the first time she spoke to me so cautiously, with a hint of humility. "All right, for Jack's sake, I'll give you a ride." I glanced at her. Vivien lowered her head even more. She probably didn't expect that Jack's mom, who had always been so fond of her, would turn on her so cruelly after his death. And here I am, being the bigger person, helping her out. I smirked slightly. Of course, I was going to help her, all the way to the end. After getting her address, I started the car. Vivien now lived in West End, the dirtiest and most chaotic part of the city. "Not living in the old place anymore?" I asked. Jack had rented a high-end apartment for Vivien. He was wary of me, so he never bought her a place, just gave her money through commission. Vivien bit her lip and said nothing. I knew why. Jack's mom was harassing her. Residents in those places would complain, landlords wouldn't tolerate it, and she couldn't rent anymore. With no cash, only gold and jewels, she couldn't sell them because Jack's mom was watching closely. "What happened between you and Jack's mom?" I pretended to ask innocently. Vivien sighed. "Wendy, are you mocking me?" I thought, yes, absolutely. But I said, "Do I have nothing better to do?" "Vivien, you're good-looking and smart. Why stoop to this? I've never wronged you, yet you stole my husband. Now you're afraid of his mom?" Vivien bit her lip harder, her eyes flashed in the rearview mirror. Maybe I just gave her an idea. "My business is my own, you don't need to lecture me," she snapped. I smiled and said nothing more. As long as she had this thought, with only 3 days given by Jack's mom, the show was about to begin. I dropped her off at her place. The rundown neighborhood didn't even have security. I came and went freely. Vivien draped the sheet over herself and left without a word of thanks. Typical. I muttered, then drove away, switched cars with my assistant at the intersection, and returned to Vivien's building. I had to see the results of my plan firsthand. Before long, Jack's dad hurried over. His steps were quick, but there was a hopeful look on his face. I quietly followed him upstairs. The old building had poor sound insulation. I could hear everything inside. Vivien was crying. "Dad, Mom was too rough on me. She stripped and beat me. Look, just look." Her voice was delicate, the kind that makes your bones ache with sympathy. Of course, Jack's dad took a serious look. "Let me get some medicine for you. Why don't you massage me instead?" You're not much older than Jack. Mom makes you look like an old man, but I'd pamper you if it were up to me, Vivien cooed. Jack's dad quickly caved. Soon, the sounds from the room turned inappropriate. I was about to go downstairs to inform Jack's mom when a big hand covered my ear. Ready to scream, my mouth was also covered. It's me, Gary's voice whispered in my ear. I turned and blinked at him, lowering my voice. What are you doing? Come downstairs with me. Gary pulled me to the car. What's so interesting about this? Gary grumbled. I said, you think I want to hear their gross noises? I'm confirming my success. Gary's face softened. How did you know I was here? Were you following me? I asked. I asked your assistant. I didn't trust you being around them. Once this is over, I'll take you home. Gary's warm breath tickled my cheek, making me flinch. He held my waist and tilted my face to look at him. Wendy, he started, but I pushed him away. Not here. This place is tainted. I didn't want to be confessed in a place linked to Jack's family. Bad omen. Gary awkwardly cleared his throat. Let's go. Wait, I need to call Jack's mom, I replied, pulling out my phone. The call rang a while before she picked up. I directly transferred $5,000 to her. She accepted instantly and called back. Wendy, I was busy and just saw your call. Her tone was soft now. I quickly said, Mom, if you and Dad are in trouble, let me know. I'll help as much as I can. Yes, without Jack, it's been hard for us. Jack's mom jumped into character. Why did you move to West End? I wouldn't have known if I hadn't dropped a friend off there. I pretended to choke up. Jack's mom hesitated. You saw him there? Yeah, I saw him enter the building and head upstairs. I thought you moved there too. Didn't you? I asked. The phone clearly brought over the sound of Jack's mother gritting her teeth. I stifled a laugh. Are you okay? I'm fine, Jack's mom said and hung up. She had installed a tracker on Jack's father's phone, something I taught her by accident. Feeling better? Gary asked. Do you think I'm a bad person? I hesitated before asking. No, I know exactly what kind of person you are. They wronged you. If you don't retaliate, you'll remember it forever. Once you get your revenge, you can start a new life, Gary said, looking at me. His gaze was so gentle that I almost wanted to kiss him. I decided that once everything was settled, I'd kiss him properly. His lips were very appealing, with a light color. I've wanted to kiss him since I was 18. Half an hour later, Jack's mom stormed in with her group of sisters. After all, according to the tracker, Jack's dad had been in that room for quite a while. Gary and I followed them upstairs. Of course, it was my request. I wanted to see the scene for 5 minutes. Jack's mom reached Vivien's door, her face green with anger. She knew where Vivien lived. Before she could knock, she heard Vivien's sweet, delicate moans from inside the room. You're even better than Jack, Jack's dad said proudly. I'll take good care of you from now on. It's a pity your wife is so fierce. If it weren't for her, we could be together forever. I'd marry you and give you a son. Vivien's voice clearly reached Jack's mother's ears. This was intolerable, stealing men under her nose. Jack's mom furiously kicked the door. Within a few kicks, the old door was broken. Inside, the two were caught naked under the blanket. You're asking for it. Plotting against me with this tramp. I'll beat you to death. Jack's mom charged at them to hit. Vivien, terrified, hid behind Jack's father, screaming for help. Jack's father was immediately riled up, and the two of them started brawling naked. It took a moment for the group of sisters to react and help out. Vivien took quite a beating amidst the chaos, with screams and curses filling the room. I tugged Gary away. Such a filthy family, they won't have peace anymore. We returned to my place. The person I had arranged to show the house arrived. I was selling it below market price. The buyer was satisfied and signed the contract on the spot. A week later, I wrapped up everything there and, with a few million in assets, went back to my hometown with Gary. Seeing me, my parents felt a mixture of sadness and relief, especially knowing I now had Gary. They were somewhat comforted. However, I was still a widow, and I worried Gary's mom might mind. When I hesitantly expressed my concern to Gary, he immediately brought his mother to meet me. Gary's mother, knowing we had separated over a misunderstanding, seeing what I'd been through, held my hand and cried for a long time, scolding Gary through her tears. "Wendy, you are our daughter-in-law, and no one can bully you. Don't worry." Only then did I truly feel relieved. After we sent his mother off, Gary snuck into my room. "What else are you worried about?" I smiled, wrapping my arms around his neck and kissed him. Finally, I got to kiss him, and I was so happy. A month later, Gary and I got married. 3 months after that, I was pregnant. Around that time, I heard about Vivien and Jack's parents again. To have a descendant, Jack's mom actually accepted Vivien having a child with Jack's dad. The three lived together, but Vivien constantly clung to Jack's dad at night. Eventually, Jack's mom couldn't take it anymore and poisoned them with rat poison, landing herself in jail. I turned off the news. Indeed, what goes around comes around. They deserved it. The kitchen filled with a delicious aroma. I walked over and hugged Gary from behind as he cooked. "Thank you for always waiting for me and bringing sunshine back into my life."